Thank you so much for coming. And thank you, David, and thank you for Chris and Rachel as well for making my experience here just flawless. You know, when you do a presentation here, you're well taken care of. And so I'm very, very grateful to you. Um, just as a short introduction, I am a child of Spartanburg, South Carolina. Okay, so I'm local. But as you heard in the introduction, you know, I left Spartanburg very early, like after high school, and kind of vowed never to come back to the upstate. No, never come back. Until I saw an announcement about an opening to establish a music therapy program at Converse College, and that made me sit up in my chair because I had thought maybe I would come back. It was in the last few years of my father's life, and so it was a perfect time for me to come back. I will talk more about establishing the program, but I do have some intentions that are different from just talking about the music therapy program at Converse. I would like for this to be interactional. I would like for you all to personalize as much as you can what I have to say. I'm imagining that you're here because you had your own questions about how music works, and I certainly did. And so please interact as you are able. And I will be playing some music for you live, asking you to interact musically, perhaps. And so I just invite you to relax, enjoy, and be an active participant. To consider your relationship to music. That is the absolute essence of what we do as music lovers, as music performers, as music listeners, and audience members. We have a relationship that we've developed over time to music. And so I ask you to keep that in mind. As I go along, I'm going to be sharing some stories with you from the long view. And when I say the long view, I've been retired since 2018. And that's given me an opportunity to reflect on my career. And this presentation, an opportunity to share my long career as a music therapist that I found out about quite early, as you will see. Thirdly is to briefly talk about the evolution of the music therapy profession, you know, which is different from music listening and music healing, and there are other ways that this phenomenon has been presented. But the music therapy profession is different, and I'll get into some of those differences as we go. I just love this quote by Leonard Bernstein, and it seems to be very important for us right now, that music can name the unnameable and communicate the unknowable. Sometimes it's hard to put into words our relationship to music and what it means, what's the meaning of music in our lives. And so here we go. Your first question: what is your first memory of music? I want you to just relax, take a deep breath, and imagine. Go back in time. Perhaps it's way back in time. If you're as old as I am, it's way back in time. And imagine that first encounter, that first memory that you have with music. And separately, because music is very large quantity, I want you to think about the first song you remember. Just keep this to yourself. You don't have to share yet. But just think through, first song you remember. Okay. And if I ask you just to name right off the top of your head 3 pieces of music, what would that be? I can think of 3. And finally, imagine a song that you believe that everyone in this room would know. Don't tell me. We'll come back. We'll come back there. What song do you think everyone in this room would know? Now, I know you don't know each other. We'll see about that. So as you've thought through those questions, the factors that might have contributed to your answers might have something to do with your ethnicity and the locale. We're all here in the upstate of South Carolina. Some of us grew up here. How many of you grew up in this area? Okay, good. And our ethnicity, certainly I am white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Growing up in the 50s in the segregated South. That certainly contributed to how I remember the first music. The other factors have to do with your age. Probably that first music you remember if you are 21 is very different from the music that a 75-year-old might remember from the beginning. And then consider your perception of yourself as having talent or not. Did you get a sense anytime as you were growing up as whether you had musical talent? Did anyone tell you, oh, you sing so beautifully? And that might have to do with how you were exposed to music as a child. Did your parents listen to music, and what kind? My mother listened to classical music, but she also listened to Broadway shows. It took me to Broadway shows as a child. And so remember how you were exposed, how your parents exposed you. Did they offer you training? Some were given the opportunity and the privilege of having musical training as a child. I started piano lessons when I was 9. And again, I'll get into the gist of more of that information in a minute. But that overall home environment so much contributes to the answers you just gave. Is there anybody who had a really difficult time with those questions? Excellent. Excellent. So, first songs. Let me answer some of those questions for myself. First songs, my grandmother singing a lullaby to me. My grandmother from Spartanburg. I remember lying in her lap on her couch and her singing, "Go to sleep, little baby, for the boogeyman hit you. When you wake, there's a ginger cake and a whole heap of little horses." Anyone ever heard that before? No.
For me.
I taught And of course, the Second Presbyterian Church, Spartanburg, South Carolina. Jesus loves me. There's research about that, declarative memory, and then what comes next? How do you anticipate what comes next? Interesting research about that. And then this song taught me a lot. Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. Red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in His sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. That taught me to look beyond the segregated South a bit more. I didn't know it at the time, perhaps didn't recognize the significance of that line in that song, but certainly it was important later on as I looked back. As I mentioned to you, my mother really enjoyed her experiences with different musical theater presentations and plays. She loved many different musical theater presentations. And she sat me in front of the television one day in December, I was probably about 5, so that I could watch Mary Martin playing Peter Pan. There are smiles in the audience. People just about my age. I thought it was amazing. There was a young woman, playing a boy, and she could fly. And I thought, how wonderful is that? And Mother bought me the album, and together we listened to the album together. And then I listened to the album by myself and learned just about every song from that musical. And one of them was Neverland. And it is a little bit like this. I don't know if I can get through the whole thing, but I have a place where dreams are born and time is never planned. It's not on any chart. You must find with your heart. Never, never. Some of you might remember more. Oh, I know that I'm here for only an hour and a half. And maybe if we have time, we could get back to it. And then when I was in junior high school, my junior high school choral director asked me to sing a solo, and it's one of my first solos that I can remember. And do you remember the Tammy movies?
Oh, yeah.
There were Tammy movies. I hear the cottonwoods whispering above. Tammy, Tammy, Tammy's in love. The old hooty owl hooty hoots like a dove. Tammy, Tammy, Tammy's in love. Love song, early love song that I remember. So those are some of my musical beginnings. There are others that I can also talk to you about. But let me also talk to you about my growing up time in Spartanburg and who and what I was influenced by, especially as a teenager. This is early to mid to late 60s is when I was growing up here. And so I was very much influenced by the civil rights movement. I remember sitting in front of the television with my grandparents, having heated discussions sometimes on what was going on. I thought that everyone should be treated equally, and people should be able to marry whomever they wanted. This was something that was being discussed a great deal during this time. And I was listening to music from that era. One of the first singer-songwriters that I remember from this era is Joan Baez. And she taught me a great deal about what was going on in the world. Peter, Paul, and Mary. Okay, remember any of those? Mm-hmm. If I had a hammer. Judy Collins. I love Judy Collins. Her voice was a bit similar to mine, and so I could sing along with her as I listened to her songs on my record player. Remember those old record players, those console record players that had a big screen in the front? Well, I would sit very close to that record player, to that screen and that speaker, and listen to the music as closely as I could. It was almost like Joan was singing to me, just singing right to me. And at Peter, Paul, and Mary, I could sing along with some of those harmonies. How did I learn to do that? But some of those songs, as I was sitting there in front of the console record player, moved me to tears. And I wondered about that. How many of you have had music move you to tears? Have you wondered why? What's going on? Why is that music moving me to tears? Is it sad? Is it presenting information that is difficult for me to hear? Why am I having this emotional response to music? As I mentioned, piano lessons started for me at age 9. And interestingly, maybe not too difficult to understand, that I was less interested in classical music than I was in popular music. So I was hearing music on the radio, WORD, in Spartanburg, that pop and R&B music station in Spartanburg. I was listening to that as well. And again, this music from the civil rights movement was speaking to me. It had meaning to me. And a lot of the classical, especially instrumental music, I had more difficulty relating to, because my parents weren't classically trained. I didn't hear classical music as a child, except for my mother, who really liked Liberace. and one of her favorite pieces of music that Liberace played was Rachmaninoff's second piano concerto, which I still hold as dear. But I took piano lessons, and later on I took voice lessons as well. Had those little recitals at Case Brothers Music House in Spartanburg. And sometimes I made mistakes, and then I was horrified. And so I developed some performance anxiety along the way. Ooh, yikes. It's really hard for me to get in front of an audience. Of course, I'm still working on that. As I played guitar, again, right up next to that speaker on that console record player, I was playing guitar, and I could feel the vibrations of the guitar on my belly. Anybody ever realized that or felt that? Paid attention to that? I was like, what's that about? What's going on? Questions. More questions. Music seemed to be a vibratory energy, and it was vibrating my own body. Is that what it is? A vibratory source? What is it? And I was learning by ear. My grandmother didn't sing in the church choir, but she always in the church sang alto. She also always sang harmony. And I stood beside her many, many Sundays and listened to her sing harmony. And I believe I learned to sing harmony by listening to her. How many of you feel comfortable singing harmony? That it just comes naturally? Yeah, it's a few of us. I didn't know why. I was curious, very curious. And then in 1965, the Beatles came along. Well, it's 1964, really. But in 1965, my mother and my great aunt took me and my best friend to Atlanta to see the Beatles. Now that was a memory. I sat up in the nosebleed section, and I could have sworn George Harrison looked straight at me. And then we ran after the car after the concert was over. I know it was their limo. I know it was. I was sure it was. So I learned a lot of Beatles songs. What's the first Beatles song that comes to your mind?
I want to
hold your
I
hand.
want to hold your hand. Many, many Beatles songs, and still have them in my playlist. Later on, maybe a year later, my mother, who was an RN, invited me to check out the Head Start program that was just beginning in Spartanburg. And if you know the Head Start program, it is a wonderful program for underserved preschool children. And I was asked to be a volunteer in one of the classrooms. It was at Fremont Elementary School then in Spartanburg. And so, again, I just started learning guitar, teaching myself to play. And I went into the classroom with the guitar, and during music time, we sang all kinds of children's songs. But there was one little boy who probably nowadays would have been diagnosed as having attentional deficit disorder or being somehow neurodivergent. He could not sit still. He ran around the room. He was not engaging or offering attention to the songs that I was singing within the room, within the class. And so the teacher pulled me aside and she said, "Would you take Tim outside the classroom and take your guitar and just see what you can do?" I didn't know what to do. I was 16, but I took myself and the guitar and Timmy outside. We were sitting on the floor in the hallway, and probably, although I must confess, I don't quite remember the song that I played for him at that time, with him at that time, but it was probably something like, "He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole world." You know that. "He's got Timmy and Beth in his hands." And he's standing, almost all the way across the hall. And he's just making circles and, having less difficulty with physical tics, but slowly begins to come a little bit closer to me. And I wonder, what's he hearing? He's got Timmy and Beth. He's got everybody. And slow and slower and slower, he comes to me. He sits down, he crosses his legs, and his head falls in my lap right in front of the guitar. And for the longest time, he was able to regulate his physical activity and his emotions. He was able to relax and enjoy. I think, at least he appeared to enjoy his music. I was baffled. Why was this happening? How could he? What was the music doing? What was I doing to give him the degree of trust that it took for him to approach me in such a beautiful way? I was delighted, I was humbled, and I was very curious. Why is this happening? And so, the next year at Spartanburg High School, where I was a member of John Mabry's chorus, very famous at the time, Spartanburg High School chorus. And they sang all around this area. But one day, John Mabry gave a lecture on careers in music. And he was, of course, talking about being a performer. And those of us who were very, very good may get to be a performer and make your living that way. And maybe you're not as good, maybe you can teach. You can always teach. In fact, my dad said, yes, you can always teach piano if everything else fails. Thanks, Dad. And so I thought, okay, you can teach. And then he said, and there is a new profession. And this is 1967. There is a new profession, and it's called music therapy. And my eyes lit up, and I sat up straight in my chair, and I went, oh my gosh, that's what I was doing. That's what was happening. It was a therapeutic effect that the music was happening with little Tim. And there's a profession? Really? How many of you had no idea there was a profession of music therapy before you walked in the room? Oh, good. This is good. Only one. So I'm speaking to the choir in some ways. But I knew from that moment that I wanted to pursue a career in music therapy. And I was only 17 again, and I had had these previous experiences relating to music, relating to other people with music, and I knew that what was happening, it felt magical to me, it felt like a calling, it felt like something I was meant to do. But where were there programs in music therapy in 1968, especially in the South? Well, there was only one that I knew of, and it was at Florida State University, and it was a master's program. No, I wasn't ready for that. Wasn't ready for that. And where could I go to get a bachelor's degree? I don't know, but later on I found out that there were music therapy programs that had just been established, much earlier, had been established at the University of Kansas and Michigan State University. I didn't want to go that far, not that far away. So I decided to try to go to another university out of state. At that time, my parents couldn't afford to send me to Converse, which was an elite prep school for girls, as far as I knew. We couldn't afford it. And they didn't have music therapy there. They had performance, opera, and music education programs, but no music therapy. So I skipped over the border to University of Georgia and auditioned for their program and for their school of music, because they didn't have a music therapy program yet. But they did have music ed, and my thought was I would go there for 2 years, and then perhaps later on I would transfer to somewhere, I don't know. But it was my good fortune that during freshman orientation in the School of Music at University of Georgia, they introduced the new director of the music therapy program. His name was Richard Graham from the University of Kansas. Dear Dr. Graham had come all the way to Georgia. He was the first black faculty member at the University of Georgia. And I'm privileged to have been mentored and taught by him. And so that's how I got into this music therapy degree program. Now, I'm going to mention one other influencers, and this is, wow, time passes quickly. Another influencer later on, after I finished my degree, I did most of my clinical work in Atlanta, mostly working for people with mental illness or other neurological problems. But I also worked with a group of seniors who had just been discharged from Milledgeville State Hospital. This is during the time where deinstitutionalization was happening. And many of the people who had been institutionalized for a long time were being let out into the community. So this was a community-based program for elders who in some cases had been institutionalized for 30 years. And again, I was privileged to work with these beautiful elders. Some black, some white, some men, some women. I decided in my work with them that I would utilize a thematic approach to the work, that I would introduce themes that they may relate to. Your favorite food, your favorite music. What do you remember most from X, Y, and Z? One of the first sessions that I did with them was about, what is your memory of your mother? Think about your memory with your mother. And to break the ice, I sang my grandmother's lullaby. Just to say, here's the first song I remember. It's not my mother singing it to me. It was my grandmother. And so I sang, go to sleep, a little baby, for the boogeyman gets you. When you wake, there's ginger cake and a whole heap of little horses and a woman way in the back of the room. She was kind of slumped over in her chair. She sat up, looked at me, and she sang, and wanna be black and wanna be blue and wanna be the color of your grandma's shoes. Go to sleep, a little baby. She finished that song for me. She taught me new words that I would never have known if she hadn't shared those with me. What a gift. What a gift. And then she said, 2 weeks before my mama died, she brought me and my sister to the house and she said, I'm going to leave you. And honey, I don't know if you're going to go with me. But she looked at me and she said, but I know you are. You going with me. And she said, let's sing this song. Let's sing this song. And she sang, this old building, keep on leaning. I gotta move to a better home. This old building, keep on leaning. I gotta move to a better home. This old body of mine, getting weaker. I got to move to a better home. This old body of mine, getting weaker. I gotta move to a better home. Another gift. Another gift from a woman who I may never have had the opportunity to know were it not for this situation, this place, at that time. But I was again so curious. Yes, I'd been practicing music therapy. By then, it was about 10 years. But there was still so much more to learn. And I realized that. And that even though I was a music therapist, that I was also a musician. Whoops. And I was also wondering about how musical memory worked. Why was it that this woman could remember the words of these songs that were deeply embedded in her experience? I thought there must be something different about why someone who has lost other types of memory. I was learning about people with Alzheimer's disease and dementia. I was wondering why some of those folks, according to the literature I was reading, seem to remember songs, words to songs, or melodies when they couldn't remember their loved one's face, or they couldn't declare different words, they couldn't retrieve different words. I was very curious about musical memory and how it worked. I met Oliver Sacks. I was lucky enough to meet him while I was, first of all, teaching at Utah State University. While I was there were several different grants that the National Institutes of Health provided for music therapists and colleagues to explore different aspects of music and health. And so I realized that yes, there was a burgeoning part of our profession that was moving towards investigating music and memory. I saw Awakenings, that wonderful movie about Oliver's life. And later on, I met the music therapists that worked with Oliver Sacks. Did you know? Conchetta Tamano is a music therapist who worked most of her, or a lot of her career with Oliver until he died. I also read The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, one of his early books. Highly recommended. I wondered then if there were specific areas of the brain that were devoted to music and memory. It seemed to be, because if I can't tell you the name of my friend, but I can sing you the first line of this song after humming a few notes, like, dee da da dee da. Yeah. Why does that happen? Why does that happen? What part of the brain is bringing up and anticipating those next musical notes? And I wondered if aspects of music memory could be identified and quantified. So when I was in graduate school later on at the University of Miami, I devised a quantitative music skills test that could be administered to people with probable Alzheimer's disease. That was my master's work, and it moved into my doctoral dissertation as well. I've found 11 tasks, musical tasks, that could be perhaps not learned, but through enculturation. Could be learned through enculturation without musical training. I found 11 tasks that were based on a national assessment of musical attainment. And so I began to develop this test, and I scored it. And some of those tasks, some of those things you might know already without the benefit of musical training, but singing the words to a familiar song is one of them. And, recognizing the sound of familiar musical instruments. Usually by the age of 9, a child without the benefit of musical training can hear the sound of a drum, for example, and identify it. Or hear the sound of a guitar and identify it. Sound of the piano, identify it. Trumpet, a little bit more difficult. But those three. Music therapists play piano, guitar, and we were trained singers as well. Okay. And so I was able to determine reliability and validity for that instrument. It's called the residual music skills test. So those residual skills, music skills learned via enculturation before the age of 9, that may still be present in a person with Alzheimer's disease or probable Alzheimer's disease. And I administered that test to hundreds of people with Alzheimer's disease, and was able to see scores that reflected their knowledge, and they're able to complete those tasks correctly. Anyone have a question right now? Because this might have stirred your own questions. Does anyone here have a loved one who has experienced dementia or Alzheimer's disease? And have you, again, think through, have you thought about incorporating music into their day? And how would you do that?
I have an interesting story on that line. A friend of mine's mother is entering that phase, and one of his sisters caught a video of her singing along with this old Sinatra song she liked. She said she wanted to play it at her funeral. And my friend asked me if I could like auto-tune it to put her into it. And it was a little bit beyond my skills, but my nephew was really good at that. So he gave it to him, and it was amazing what he did to her voice. It still sounded like her, but she's singing with Frank Sinatra. And they're going to be playing that at her birthday. Beautiful story.
And so, again, the relationship that she had with this music that meant so much to her. So as I studied during my graduate work, I learned much more about the physiological aspects of music making and music listening. Hearing that listening to music, playing music, produces almost immediate effects in the brain. And when I say the brain, I mean many different aspects of the brain are firing their neurons at the same time. Especially when beloved music is playing, when familiar music is playing. And familiarity seems to be a key. And music that doesn't match one's culture, one's age, etc., all those factors that we talked about earlier, might not have the same effect. But if it's the right music, heart rate fluctuates, respiration, galvanic skin response, that neurodermal electrical charge, like getting cold chills when you hear music that you love. There's research about that. And that music, we have learned, especially over the last 20 years, I'll say, that the neurophysiology has become much more researched and validated. Then, of course, we understand that when one listens to music or makes music, that the auditory system is involved and the temporal lobe connected to the auditory system. That when I read music, the visual cortex is involved. If I watch a performer play, again, the visual cortex is involved. That incredible emotional response that I get when I cried when I heard the music that I cared about is connected to the limbic system and our emotional responses in the hippocampus, the amygdala, the hypothalamus. When I interact with someone else musically, and there is that beautiful connection that Tim gave to me, that eye contact, something must be happening in the frontal lobe. Now, this mirroring effect might be at play. And it's not to be forgotten. And then when I'm actually playing an instrument, my cerebellum, my motor areas of the brain are also interconnected with what I'm doing. What we call motor memory. I'm amazed that at the age of 75, I can still remember how to play a guitar. And I can think, even if the guitar is not with me, and I have my eyes closed, I can think where those chords are played. I can play them in my head. I think that's amazing. I think that's just pretty amazing. Yeah. I can sing those songs and, oh my gosh, they keep me up at night. Preparing for this presentation and all the songs I wanted to present were just earworm after earworm after earworm. Does that happen to you? Yeah. Now, where does that come from? Oh, it might have something to do with long-term memory retrievals. when short-term memory learning something musical is converted into long-term memory after a while, after repetition and practice and more practice, converted into long-term memory, and it's there. It's just there. And it stays there for a very, very long time. In fact, what I do know is that when my grandmother was dying, and I was in her room, privileged to be there. You know, I was about 20. I wasn't sure what to do, but I knew that the auditory system was the last sensory system to leave the body. I knew that. And so, what did I do? I held her hand and I started to sing, "Go to sleep, little baby." She held my hand and she revolved the program again. When we were ginger, oh, the little horses, and wanna be black, wanna be blue, wanna be the color of your and my shoe. Till the end, there it was, and there was her heartbeat, right on my palm. My mother, as she was dying, had musical hallucinations, so-called. And I was with her and she said, "Do you hear that?" Just as loud as she could. "Do you hear that?" I went, "What are you hearing, Mom?" She said, "Music." "Oh, what kind of music?" "Oh, it's beautiful," she said, very clearly. "It's big," she said. It's an orchestra, it's an organ." She started naming the instruments that she heard. And she said, "You must hear it. Of course you hear that. You hear that." I said, "No, but I am so pleased that you told me that you hear it." And it was giving her peace, and it was giving her comfort. And I felt, as I had felt with my grandmother, I felt too the sense of peace. Even though she was not a trained musician, neither was my grandmother a trained musician. But the meaning and the relationship that they had to music touched me and keeps me curious about this amazing phenomenon that has been with humanity for as long as we know, in every culture that we know. And there are very few instances of people who say, "I don't like music." Now there are a few, but perhaps those people have not been exposed to music in the way many of us have. And so it is a universal phenomenon. And of course, here in this museum, we are reminded time and time again how many different cultures created how many different amazing instruments that you see in this exhibit. Neurohormones, just mentioned briefly, you know, we've measured neurohormones in relationship to music, and we know that dopamine, which is connected to especially people with Parkinson's disease, which my mother had. If the dopamine levels are low, you know, there are more tremors. We boost that with L-Dopa and other probably more recent drugs now. But we do know that music affects dopamine levels and serotonin levels, which are low in people with depression. Oxytocin is produced when mothers breastfeed their young, you know, and bonding takes place. And cortisol is a stress hormone. And we know that cortisol levels can be reduced by listening and performing some types of music. And as I mentioned, music memory seems to be very different and more robust, and it stays with you for longer. I think it's amazing. And so moving very quickly into music as a therapeutic intervention and the work that I have done and been so honored to do. And I speak about live music because music therapists stress the use of live music in their work. Yes, recorded music is used, but there's something that happens again with live music, that connection that makes a big difference. And because, live music is flexible, it can be altered as one is playing it. New strings. So if I played Go to Sleep a Little Baby for the Boogerman, doesn't quite get it. You can play it like that. If I play it like this, go to sleep a little baby, for the Boogerman, yeah. While you wait, there's a ginger cake, and I can pause. There's a whole heap of little horses. So it's flexible. The way that music therapists work is about flexibility. It's about how the person you're working with is breathing. Are they clapping their hands? Okay. Are their eyes closed? Are they moving their mouth? And is it the same rhythm or the same time that you are playing, the same rhythmicity? Or do I need to slow it down so that they can get those words out? We can do that as music therapists. And so the work can be as simple or as complex as it comes. And it can address a broad spectrum of moods. I can work with someone who's very angry, and I might decide to play an excerpt from Holt's The Planets. Remember Mars? It's a very angry piece of music. and that might stimulate that person and give that person a context in which to share and express their anger. How about if they beat on a drum? Can definitely give that person a way to contain, to say that the music contains the emotion. Music contains the mood. Music accepts the mood or the emotion. Of course, I've talked about diverse cultures and the incredible gift that I feel having been told and communicated and shared music from the African American culture, which living in the segregated South I might not have been able to do. That obviously it facilitates interaction, is adaptive, and taps residual music skills. So I wanted to tell you about another piece of clinical research that I conducted back in 2002, 2003, when I was still at Utah State University. I had achieved tenure there, and so during my sabbatical, I had written a proposal to the American Association of University Women. And my proposal was to work with a group of women who had been exposed to domestic violence and some sexual violence, who were being served in a community center in Logan, Utah. That's where Utah State is located. And I was very curious as to how these women might engage with a variety of arts activities. Art, poetry, movement, and what I am privileged to practice, music therapy. I thought that they may engage differently. The women were all a part of a support group who met weekly, and I was asked to come in as a co-facilitator of this group and gradually begin to integrate musical and arts activities into their time together. They were already journaling. The women were journaling. So they had their journals with them. They brought them every session. And I was listening to their poetry and their stories, and they were so vulnerable and so beautiful and hopeful and strong, and I realized that some of those poems could be probably set to music, and that's one of the skill sets that music therapists have, is to encourage and to facilitate songwriting. And so I began to work with some of them. They would come into the room and put their poetry, they'd tear out their poems from their journal and put them in a big basket in the middle of the room. And I would pick one up randomly and read it, and then begin to sing it. And do you like this? Yeah. Well, the women had given informed consent, of course, to participate in this research. And they were beginning to give each other all kinds of positive feedback about their creative endeavors. And yes, some of them wanted to sing the songs now that they had written. And they said, well, couldn't we just share these songs with our staff here at CAPSA, the name of the organization? Couldn't we share these songs with them? And so gradually I said, well, of course, if that's what you want. Again, consensus building. Always concerned with their safety and not wanting to re-traumatize them. They began to invite their case managers into the sessions. And the case managers were like, this has never happened before. and this is amazing. Yeah. And so after about halfway through my time with them, and overall it was about a 9-month time period, about halfway through they said, we want to perform these pieces. We want to share them with a broader audience, not just the staff members. And I said, well, who else would you like to bring in? And they would say, I want to bring in my family, my children. I want to bring in another loved one. And so we found a place. It was a First Presbyterian church in Logan, Utah, had a basement. And we began rehearsing what we were doing. And the women agreed that what we were doing should be called Finding Voice. The voices of Utah battered women. I didn't want to use that term. That was their term. Voices of Utah battered women. And so the shift changed from therapeutic work to performance-oriented work, where we were rehearsing every week. We were finding people, women who wanted to do solos. We were finding people who didn't want to be on stage but wanted to create costumes or make sets, for this performance. One woman brought out her flute and said, I haven't played in years. I want to play flute in this performance. it was amazing how the talents then were just coming out of the woodwork, how they wanted to express themselves so creatively and so beautifully and so vulnerably, with what they had learned and what they wanted to offer. And so we ended up performing, first of all, with the staff and then with the family members. And gradually, over another period of about 3 more months, we were asked to perform this piece, which is about an 1.5-hour performance piece, all over the state of Georgia. It was the most incredible experience of my life to see these women so strong, so willing, so brave. I said, "Do you want to disguise yourselves on stage? Are you not afraid that a perpetrator will come along and end up in the audience?" Well, we had police who monitored our performances to keep those women safe. And they said, "No, we don't want to disguise ourselves. Do you want to use your own names in the program that we create?" "Yes, we want to use our own names." So empowering these women, one after another, just became an incredible experience. Barbara here, my partner, became one of the coaches and music directors of the show, and another former student, Maureen Hearns, also worked with us on the show. 9 different performances all over the state of Utah, educating people about the realities of domestic violence and how to heal from it. I'm still in contact with many of these women through Facebook, and most of them are doing quite well. A few have passed away, but what a joy to experience their empowerment through music making and other arts experiences to create Finding Voice. We also created a CD. So the entire script, the entire play was put on CD, and they're back in the back there. I'm going to sell them at a reduced price. This was back in 2005 that it came out. So for $10, you can take Finding Voice home with you, if you like. It's intense, but the entire script is written in the insert. And so if you're interested in this area of our practice, I invite you to experience Finding Voice for yourselves. Any questions at this point? You're so quiet. Yes.
How is music related to the amygdala?
Oh dear. Come on. How is it related? Well, the amygdala, as I understand it, has to do with that it's the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight. Correct me if I'm wrong. No? I have music therapists back here. I have researchers back here. They can correct me. But again, it has to do with arousal. Okay? So remember that old woman sitting up, and singing with me. I'm imagining, because I can't see, that her amygdala was being activated as the sound travels through the auditory system. One of the first places it goes, is to the amygdala. I know this is not answering your question, and I'll tell you, this is so good that you asked this, because there are so many more questions that have not been answered about how music works. And if anything, I want to bring those questions to your mind so that you'll explore more as well. Is that a backhanded answer? Okay. This is Patty's song from Finding Voice. Now, if there was a way to define what music does, I would go to Patty. So I think she did a remarkable job. And the song sounds a little bit like this. Music is an energy, an music is our comfort as feelings come and go, etc. Oh, wait a second. But it's a hymn. More. No, she wanted to sing a hymn. Robert says, "Sing more, sing more." Thing is, I haven't memorized it, and so I have to come back and look at the words. But I guess I could sing it without Kenneth. Music is an energy, an ebb and a flow. Music is a comfort as feelings come and go. Music comes in waves, they gently rise and fall. Melody and harmony encompass us all. Melody and harmony encompass us all. Music is a healer, bringing peace within. I love this line. Music helps us breathe when our very breath grows thin. Music helps us reach out, and as we touch, we gain reconnection to our souls. It soothes away the pain. Music is an energy with waves that ebb and flow. It's a comfort as feelings come and go. The pulsing of my heartbeat, the rhythm of my soul. Music breathes inside of me as my life unfolds. I couldn't have done any better. Beautiful, heartfelt description and definition of the meaning of music in her life. My third intention, to introduce the profession of music therapy to you if you do not know what it is already. There are many people here who know what our profession is. As I said, I've known about this field since 1967. I didn't realize that it was a research-based profession where music interventions are used within a relationship to achieve outcomes in a variety of clinical domains, including psychological, physiological, social, educational, cognitive. And as I look at this list, I know that there are different models of music therapy. Not everyone practices in the same way. So you should also be aware that there are different models. Neurological music therapy is one, and it's probably the most used model, I would say, nationally. And it connects very easily with the medical model of music therapy practice. Psychological, I feel that I was informed by psychological theory, specifically Gestalt therapy, person-centered therapy. I would consider myself to be more of that person-centered therapist. Works easily one-on-one, in a group as well. There's also another model of music therapy called guided imagery and music, which requires extensive additional training. And that is a passive music therapy approach where the person who is being treated lies down as mostly classical music is played for him or her. And the therapist takes notes and writes down what the client sees as the music is playing. So the client speaks out loud as the music is playing, and the therapist writes notes, and then they have a verbal processing after the music is completed.
Kind of a musical workshop. Wow.
a musical workshop.
Yeah, workshop.
Workshop tips.
Yeah.
A musical workshop. Okay, something like that. And although her work started really, I think, in the 60s, early 60s, and was initially done with veterans who were experiencing trauma. And some of those veterans were receiving different kinds of drugs. And she said, I don't think we need drugs with the music. The music will stand on its own and produce the same effects. So she began to develop her theory and her practice. And it was certainly an international accepted method of music therapy. I know I've left out some others. If y'all want to chime in, please do. Again, this is a snapshot. Down at the bottom, you'll see educational and cognitive. Educational would imply a developmental model of music therapy, working with small children at their appropriate developmental age, and music development that corresponds with their age. And then the cognitive aspects definitely works with Alzheimer's patients and those with other cognitive and memory deficits. Briefly describe the history of our field. It began after World War I and World War II, where music volunteers began to come into the VA medical centers and play music for the veterans. But they quickly realized they did not have the skills to process the music experience with the veterans. They realized that they needed more training. And so some of the first academic programs were developed in 1948 and 49. Again, I mentioned Michigan State and the University of Kansas. Then, this is when I was born. So I feel like I was born into this field. So I was born in 49, just as the profession was beginning. In 1950, the National Association of Music Therapy came to be, and mainly a behavioral approach to music therapy, kind of a Skinnerian-oriented music therapy. And then on the other side of the country, in 1971, the American Music Therapy Association evolved, which seemed to be more psychoanalytic, more psychoanalysis and music. In 1981, the certification board was created that created a credential for the field. Another thing that is very important to us is that we are recognized as a healthcare profession with a credential, and that is board certification. All of the music therapists who are practicing music therapists in our state are board certified. I, as a retired music therapist, am no longer board certified. However, I'm still a retired member of the American Music Therapy Association, which was founded in 1988, bringing together the National and the American Music Therapy Association. And then the World Federation of Music Therapy, that has a World Congress every 3 years, I believe. Okay. I've spoken at several of those amazing conferences with music therapists from all over the world. And what an amazing group of people we are. All of us who feel like we were called to do this, and have a deep belief in the effects of music as a indelible and important part of our humanity. Just a little bit about the American Music Therapy Association. Of course, you can go right online and it'll come up for you, and you can find all kinds of things, more than you ever want to know. And this is AMTA's definition of music therapy. the clinical and evidence-based use of music interventions to accomplish individual goals within a therapeutic relationship, again, that relationship, by a credentialed professional who has completed an approved music therapy program. I'm imagining that we're approaching around 80 music therapy programs nationally now. It was 70 when I was still teaching. And here again, some common interventions that we use in our work. And we are taught these interventions within our curricula. You can read really well. But if you'd like to stop me and say, no, talk more about this, I'm happy to do that.
Can you sing it? We'll remember it long.
Yeah.
Songs used to teach, enhance learning, songwriting and analysis of song lyrics. I'll do the rest of it. So, improvisation is a very important part of what we do. Remember I talked about the flexibility of music and how to manage it as it comes and goes and flows, and we watch the person's response to the music that we're making. So here's an improvisational kind of a little fun thing to do. So you can just sing this thing, sing what I sing, sing after me. Ba-dee-dee-dee-da. Ba-dee-dee-dee-da. Ba-dee-dee-da-da. Ba-dee-dee-da-da. Do-dee-dee-dee-dee-da. Ba-dee-dee-dee-da. Dee-da-da-da. Dee-da-da. Wa-da-da-da. Wa-da-da-da. We-fa-da. We-fa-da. Da-da-wa-da. Da-da-da. Now these folks over here are going to go ba 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 da da da. Sing ba 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 da da da. Ba ba. Keep going. Just up to David. Ba da da ba da da ba da da ba da da. And you were able to keep your part, which is something else. It's amazing. That even though these folks over here were doing something totally different, you were managing to hold on to the line that I gave you. Yeah, pretty incredible, I think. Okay. Now, clinical process, I'm not going to go over that. Quality assurance. We are a profession because we adhere to standards of practice, standards of education, and we have a code of ethics. And I was very privileged to serve as co-chair of the ethics board for many, many years. I can't count them all. And so is Dr. Carol Schultes back here, also on our ethics board. The Certification Board of Music Therapists establishes an examination that all graduates of music therapy programs must pass and continue to pass after 5 years, or completing 100 music therapy continuing education credits in order to keep your certification. We have a scope of professional practice and continuing education requirements. Now, we are not saying that music therapy is the only way that music can contribute to health and well-being. music is a huge thing. And we welcome all kinds of practitioners and musicians who have as their intention, a healing focus. We work with these people every day, and love it when a musician comes and says, I'd like to volunteer. I'd like to see what you do and volunteer and learn about this field that is so it is complex, and yet it is so meaningful to so many people. These are the research journals and texts that I would recommend. And by the way, I want to highly recommend this book to you. This is a book that was edited by Renee Fleming, the renowned opera singer who was on the board at the Kennedy Center for many years, who has enriched the medical profession, taught the medical profession, advocated for music therapy, and been an incredible advocate for our field. But this is a wonderful book for the layperson. You don't need to read all of our numerous research articles. This is a great overview. It was completed in 2024, so it's very relevant, very new. So I highly recommend this book. Of course, you can go to Barcelona Press and look at all of their music therapy offerings. AMTA has their own publishing house, I guess you would call it, and they publish many of our textbooks as well that are used in our coursework. But please do pick up this book, and know that a lot of our music therapy research recently has been funded by the National Institutes of Health. Remember what's happening to the National Institutes of Health. Renee Fleming resigned from the Kennedy Center in protest of what's happening there. But her work remains. Incredible volume of work that she has compiled to teach you about the effects of music and health, including music therapy. One of my favorite chapters in here is from Conchetta Tomano. I told you that she's a music therapist that worked with Dr. Oliver Sacks. There's a beautiful chapter here about how she met him and her relationship with Dr. Sacks over the years, which you won't see anywhere else. It's just a beautiful story about their connection. And some other chapters in here are about a chapter from Rhiannon Giddens, that wonderful, multifaceted, multi-talented musician and composer. And another one by Esperanza Spalding, the incredible jazz bassist. So again, a variety of perspectives on how these individuals have identified and learned about music and health, and what their ideas are, as well as some descriptions of music therapy research in cardiac rehabilitation and in dementia as well. So have at it. Buy this book. Just a brief note about music therapists in South Carolina. Here we are. Y'all, hold up your hands. We have music therapists here. And many of us, we're being affected by these cuts, especially cuts in Medicaid. Some of us work via Medicaid waivers, in city schools. We are approaching this challenge on a national level. Just know that. I attended a very brief presentation by our executive director the other day. Did y'all catch that? The good news is that music therapists partner with other arts organizations all over the country. And so we're taking a stand And of course, we're calling all of our legislators. But these are music therapists that I know about who are working in South Carolina. There are many more, I am sure. And connect with them. You can by going to scmusictherapy.org. And now, let's revisit that question way back. What song do you feel that everyone in this room would know? Raise your hand and let me know. Yes.
Hey Jude.
Hey Jude. Interesting.
really?
Star Spangled Banner.
Star Spangled Banner.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Puff the Magic Dragon.
Well,
You are my sunshine.
you are my. You cheated.
Oh, no.
No, you. No, that's just on my residual music skills test.
Yeah.
Sing the song, sing the words of any song you know, and "You Are My Sunshine" is one of them. One of the most recognized songs. You haven't mentioned one other that I'm amazed you haven't yet.
Amazing Grace.
America the Beautiful. What?
Amazing Grace.
Amazing Grace. One of the most recognizable songs in this country.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star.
Very good from your childhood. Your childhood.
Rudolph.
Rudolph the Red. Silent Night.
Old Lang Syne.
Old Lang Syne.
Nobody knows the words.
Now, are we going to come to some consensus as to which one we should sing together? How many would like to sing Amazing Grace?
Sure.
How many would like to sing, no, raise your hand. How many would like to sing You Are My Sunshine? Oh, dude. How many would like to sing America the Beautiful? How many would like to sing Star Spangled Banner?
Does everybody have a vote?
How many would like to sing Happy Birthday? Raise your hand. Now, come on, y'all.
Birthday. There we go.
Whose birthday is it?
Today is Tom Strange's birthday.
It's Tom's birthday.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Tom.
Harmony.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, Tom. Without training, all by enculturation, way before the age of 9, you knew this song. That is all I have for you. Except a reminder that next September, Converse University is celebrating our 20th anniversary of the music therapy program. We are so excited and I look forward to seeing some of my old students come together. We're just going to spread the word all over the country because we are all over the country. It will be a month of perhaps panel presentations, lectures, improvisational events, drum circles, you name it, to bring together our fabulous music therapy program, currently coordinated by Dr. Carol Schultes.
Stand up.
Ms. Eckerding, who is she is not here.
No, she's
She is, who is her compatriot in our program, and I get to be a beloved elder, which I'm very happy to be. What a joy! These are some of my very first graduates. Jewel is a psychotherapist in Columbia, and this is Shantae. Is working. She has her master's now, working in New York City. And Amy just came back to South Carolina. She was in Florida for a long time, I believe, working in hospice.
She's at Marshall Pickens.
Is she?
She's full-time at Marshall Pickens.
Oh,
last-
excellent. Would you say that a little bit louder?
Yeah, she's full-time at Marshall Pickens Psychiatric.
Great, great. So these are my dear students. This is Lori Peebles.
Oh,
Now,
Lori got her
Yes.
PhD at University of Miami, where I got mine, and now she is at Georgia Southern University with their graduate program. Okay. Now, I am done. I welcome any questions. I'm way over time. Thank you so much for your time.
And